Hey, today we are going to start a Build-A-Book where we all work together. A lot of you have said something about not knowing where to start and you want to make your own journals, and we're all about the paper and the fabric and the stitching. So we're going to start off with a journal, and we're going to start off with the cover of a journal, and I'm going to show you different ways to paint. I'm going to show you different mediums to use, different ways to paint. Hopefully I can give you some tips on things that I don't like to use or that I love to use. And I'm sure that many of you have your own styles and you've already done this. Feel free to add ideas. This isn't set in stone. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Inktense blocks. I have the Inktense pencils too, and they're great, but I'm trying to make this short and sweet, so I'm going to use the blocks. So you can just color and put just some color down and take your paintbrush, and I'm using fabric paintbrushes because I like how they kind of grind it into the fabric. So I just added some water, and this is a type of a watercolor, but once it dries it's permanent. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is pick another color. Yeah, they're chipping all over the place. These are my grandsons. I have the big set. He has the little set. They were handier. Dip your Inktense block into water and color, and you can get the same effect, but you can put it down wet faster. So that's one thing you can do. Okay, now I'm going to use some products by Jacquard. We have the textile color, we have the Dynaflows, and we have the luminaries, which are a bit metallic. The thing with the luminaries, you gotta shake and shake and shake, because as you can see, it's a darker green here and the metallics all settle to the bottom. So because I just shook them, we're going to start with the luminaries. I'm going to go with a wet brush, and I'm just going to put it on in splotches. Now, if splotchiness is not your thing and you want some organized, you can easily paint your squares or your rectangles or your circles, or paint flowers, but because we're going to add a lot of stuff to this, I'm just kind of keeping it as a background. So I'm going to switch brushes just so I don't have to get this all clean. I'm going to use the textile paint this time so you can kind of get an idea. This is a lot like acrylic paint, but it is meant for fabric. So it's going to have a little softer feel to it when it dries. And you would just paint that. So we're going to get another brush, and I'm going to show you the Dynaflows. Now these are inks, almost. I mean, they have the consistency of inks. They go on very wet. Now if you want, you can get water and extend that and get a watercolor look, or variances in the color of your little splotch that you're making. Come in a lot of beautiful colors, and they are really fun to work with. They do bleed as far as when you're putting them next to a wet color. When they're dry, they're permanent. So that is the Jacquard brands of paints and how I use them. Okay, now we're going to paint with acrylic paints, just your good old craft store paint. I'm going to start off using my very favorite. It's the cheapest one out there in the color Hawaii. It's just the perfect turquoise. Well, I started to open this and I realized that when I was squeezing it out, it was stringy and clobby. And we all have that occasionally with our paints. So I'm just pulling it out. But I love this color, and Oh no, I got it on me. So I'm going to just take this and daub. You can daub on top of other colors that you've already done. It's not that I'm that tight and I don't want to waste paint. It's just it's another color and texture. So now I am going to take this paint and I'm going to put some of it on my jelly plate. And we're going to do a little bit of jelly plate marking. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to take my bone folder. It's close. And I'm going to squiggle in it. And some stripes. And some checkers. Whatever you feel like doing. And I'm just going to stamp it down. And yeah, I have a rubber stamp on here. These are separate rings. And they're so hard to line up that I decided I wasn't taking it off. So there's another image. Put some more color in. Again, with the acrylic paints, you can do this just like we did with the others, and you can paint your splotches. So I'm sure you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, everything is just splotchy and there's no rhyme or reason. Well, because I'm recording this as I'm doing it, I'm not sure how it's going to look either. But I think we're going to be able to pull it out and make it look really cool when we're done. So hang with me. We'll get this all colored and then we'll do some other things in the way of paint. But this is just acrylic paint. You can use a fabric medium with it, but you don't have to. Now remember, when you're painting, if you are putting a wet color next to a wet color, they could wick into each other. If you don't want that, paint splotches. Let them dry and come back and paint other splotches, and they won't bleed in together. Okay, I'm back. I have painted the whole thing. And yes, mine's bigger than the size we're going to need for this project, but it was a clearance item at Hobby Lobby. It's a canvas napkin, and it was handy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use black paint and a stencil brush, and I'm cleaning it off to where it's fairly dry. And I'm just going to come in here and highlight a few edges. What this kind of does is makes everything, it makes some things pop and it makes some things kind of blend in and gives a little bit of shadow, like around the circles. I've got a little bit of a shadow, so it kind of makes them come to the top. That's one way. And of course, then there's always to add embellishments with your stencils. And I love this stencil because it gives me one stencil with a lot of possibilities. So I put this little flower there, and I do definitely use my stencil brush until it's really dry because it gives you so many different dimensions on the black. Of course, I love the polka dots. So that's one thing we can do to add color and blend everything together. There's always the punchinella or sequin waste, whichever you want to call it. Again, circles. And I'm just going to hit and miss. I don't want anything straight. As you can see, I haven't put anything straight on any of my paint or anything. You can also take your paint pens. I have the Posca markers. And you can just doodle. Now you don't want to get this too crazy and full because we will be adding fabric and papers to it. What we're doing right now is a background. So if you put something on here and you absolutely love it, keep in mind that there's a possibility it could be covered up somewhat. I also used the Sharpie markers, water-based. And I just add some doodles. I don't pay attention to anything. I like to do a lot of lines and of course spirals. And you can add to something you've already got. So now my pretty little red thing looks like a soccer ball or a basketball or, I don't know, some kind of sports ball. You can also use the paint markers for fabric. They're not as much fun, but you can kind of fill in some spaces where you may have some white and make your colors kind of blend a little bit better. As you can see, I'm going over some of that dark stuff here, and it just kind of makes everything muffled in between. And then, of course, we always can do some stamping. Again, with the stamping, you might cover something up when you're getting ready to do the final project. So you can make it as full as you want or as not full as you want. And don't worry if you don't get the whole image, because chances are you're not going to see it later on. Now, when I was doing the initial painting, I said I was going to tell you about some paints I like and don't like. Everything I've used so far I like. I don't like to use the tube acrylics on fabric or even on my collages because they have a different feel to them when they dry, and I like to doodle on top of everything I make, and these don't let me do that. That's just me. So I have painted all of my background, and I have taken the black paint and just added some darkness to kind of make everything else pop. Doodles, as you can tell, I like to do my doodles in black. It just makes everything else stick out. I took some metallic paints and did some swirls, and I flicked black paint with a toothbrush. And so now we have this big chunk of fabric. We only need to use 9x16 to make our journal. Yep, this is the journal. We're going to, by having the big piece of fabric, I can take this and pick out what I like and use just that chunk of fabric. Now, say I like this part right here. If you want to leave extra at the bottom so that you can flip it up and make a pocket when we're done, that would be fine too. Along our journey, we are going to make a cover. As you can see right here, I've done the front, the spine, and the back. I've went with 9x16 because that holds the papers that we use, the size that we've been doing our swaps with. And this way we can make some pages and get used to journaling and making our own journals and mixing everything we can think of. And when we're all done, we'll have a nice thick book to put our pages in. Along the way, that is going to be the process of how to get your pages in, how to finish your cover. We're going to leave it like this for now because to do the inside of it, we want to make sure we've got some pages ready to go in first, so we know exactly what we want to do. So we're going to have 1 week to get a piece of fabric painted. There is no right or wrong. Put it down, play with it. As you can see, even though no matter what I used, my fabric is still really flexible, but it will have another layer on the inside, so it still will be a strong cover. Thanks, and hope you enjoyed playing with us.